Well, welcome everyone to the fourth session of the educational component of our community of practice. I want to thank the partners and the co-sponsors that you can see there in the list of logos. And I also want to just remind everybody again, as we have, of the key message: community is medicine. That throughout human history, it's been our ability to band together and cooperate that has always been key to helping people survive, adapt, and remain healthy and resilient during crisis and solve complex problems. And by organizing what we call transformational resilience coordinating networks, resilience networks in communities, we can do this again now for the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis and many other issues. So why is building community resilience so vital? Why is community so vital? And it's because the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis has created what I call the trauma scene. Here's a graphic that I created for my book a couple of years back called The Drivers of the Trauma Scene. You can see on the very top, the outer one, we've got ongoing hotter temperatures. But we also have more frequent, intense, and prolonged heat waves going to the right, more frequent and intense wildfires, biodiversity depletion and loss, ocean acidification and depletion and loss of aquatic life. Up to the left side, we have more frequent and extreme wind, rain, snow, and other kinds of storms, more frequent and prolonged droughts, habitat loss and degradation, sea level rise, coastal flooding, and other things, and a whole bunch of surprising, unforeseen impacts. Those drivers are then creating a whole bunch of social ecological factors like increased inequalities and injustices, food and water shortages and food insecurities, damage to homes, commercial properties, all sorts of new illnesses and diseases, job and income losses, the stress of constant adjusting to ever-changing conditions, water shortages and insecurities, forced mass migration away from the communities you lived in, rising costs for mitigation and adaptation, and damage to local infrastructure and community. That's what I described as the trauma scene. And this requires us to rethink how we live together. We must prepare people and communities now, and it must be a top priority for the trauma scene. And this requires moving beyond the individualistic focus that, especially in the Western world, we have, and certainly in the US, to embrace a holistic and interconnected approach that prioritizes solidarity and mutual aid. And this is vital also, not only to help each other and address these issues, but to activate the transformational changes needed in thinking and practices to prepare for, adapt, and remain healthy and resilient during relentless adversities. Just one example of the community approach and how it can be effective. In Iceland, of all places, they made communities responsible for teen substance abuse. In the 1990s, almost 60% of teens smoked, 48% of teens drank alcohol regularly, almost half, and 15% used marijuana. Traditional school warnings, just say no campaigns, and other individually focused interventions all failed to change that. Success occurred only after residents came together to make the problems a whole community responsibility. So they adopted strategies of increasing parent-teen time, expanding after-school programs, and most importantly, strengthening community bonds in the community. And as a result, by 2015, the last research I saw, school smoking dropped to 16%, drinking to 9%, cannabis use to 5%. And the secret to their success, they stopped treating teen substance abuse as individual choices and started treating it as a community responsibility. And today, Iceland still has by far Europe's lowest youth substance abuse. So the blueprint exists, and the evidence is very clear. community-based initiatives are effective for many types of issues, and they are urgently needed for the trauma scene. So just a brief summary of last week's third session of the educational series. We talked about the fact that building social connections should be done when engaging residents in the second foundational protective factor, make a just transition by engaging residents and enhancing local built physical, economic, and ecological conditions in safe, healthy, just, and equitable ways. And when engaging in each of these other protective factors, it is also very important to engage residents in the third foundational protective factor, build universal literacy about mental wellness and transformational resilience. Help everybody understand how trauma and toxic stress can affect their body, minds, emotions, and behaviors, and then learn simple self-regulation, or what I call presencing skills, and adversity-based growth, or purposing skills. So today's focus is on the fourth and the fifth foundational factors that our research a number of years ago looked at. The fourth is protective factor is to actively engage residents in practices known to build and sustain mental wellness and transformational resilience. And the fifth foundational protective factor is engage residents, offer residents ongoing opportunities to heal their trauma. So just to summarize what we've done so far, we started off with the first session talking about how to organize a TRCN and why that was important. We then focused on how to build community capacity by offering trauma healing events or involving residents in asset mapping. We said the information developed from that should help develop the TRCN strategy, vision, and action plans. Then we focused on the 5 foundational protective factors. The first one, building social connections across boundaries, and the last week, creating supportive physical, built economic, and ecological conditions, and developing universal mental wellness literacy. And today we're going to focus on fostering engagement in activities to promote mental wellness and resilience, and establishing ongoing opportunities to heal traumas. There are a number of other steps that follow that, how you put that into a strategy, implement it, continually evaluate and improve it, et cetera. We're not going to deal with that in this educational series, but there's lots of information about that and support we can provide. The information in the handbooks you get when you form a TRCN and want to begin to implement a strategy. So I want to just briefly go through again very quickly how we can help you form and operate a TRCN with that in mind, what I just said. If you're interested in forming a TRCN in your neighborhood or in your community, you can apply. You get on our website, and we'll share that again in a second, the link. And we will designate you as a prospective TRCN. And we will then send you a handbook on how to form a TRCN and a bunch of other things, most of which we've talked about, but it's much more detailed. We'll provide technical assistance by email, by phone, and involve you in a community practice to help you form a wide and diverse steering committee, and that steering committee develops its own goals, vision, and operating procedures. Once you have a TRCN steering committee together with a vision and goals, et cetera, we will invite you to become an emerging transformational resilience coordinating network. And that is, we will provide you with a different handbook, a second one, a technical assistance, and involvement in the community practice to help you develop a multi-systemic strategy that takes all these foundational protective factors and puts them into a strategy to build population mental wellness and resilience in your community. And when your TRCN steering committee has developed that strategy, we will then invite you to become a commissioned TRCN. And that is when you're ready to implement the strategy. So we'll provide you even a third handbook and technical assistance involved in the community practice to help you learn how to implement and continually improve that strategy. So we invite you to become part of that. Before we go further, though, let's take a short resilience pause. And I always think these are good sort of pictures. My wife for almost 30 years was a veterinary technician, and so cats are been in our lives for a long time, and they always make you laugh. At least they make us laugh. Uh, Laughing at the world and the self is a vital resilient skill during adversities. So I'd like to invite you to write down 1 to 3 of the funniest things you have experienced, seen, or heard in the past few weeks. Just think of something. Just briefly write it down. Doesn't have to be huge, just anything that made you laugh, it was just funny. Maybe it was seeing a cat do a funny thing, watching a funny movie. And note how that funny thing or funny things made you feel inside. What happened? How did you feel? And then if it resonates, take a moment to use the skylight method we talked about a couple of sessions ago to notice what you're experiencing right now in your body, in your mind, in your emotions as you think about that funny thing. You're observing yourself objectively from the outside, basically. You see you're not trying to change anything. There's no judgment, just what's happening as you think about those funny things. And if you're willing, if you would post in chat one of the funny things you experienced and how it made you feel. Just take a shot at that if you would, so people can see. Humor does not ignore difficult things. It just makes them tolerable. And it is contagious. It strengthens our resilience by dissolving negative emotions like anger and anxiety. It puts problems often into perspective, enables you to better deal with the situation, and often enhances our relationships with others, which makes dealing with the problems even better or even easier. And actually, people don't realize it, but the research shows that laughing also really helps your physical health. It's as powerful or more powerful, laughing a lot, as yoga and taking medications, et cetera. But keep in mind that the humor has to be positive, not negative or cynical kinds of humor. And I always like this quote by Angelou, a great writer, that laugh as much as possible, always laugh. It's the sweetest thing you can do for oneself and for one's fellow human being. And this brings us to the 4th foundational protective factor: continually engage residents in specific practices that help grow and sustain capacity for mental wellness and transformational resilience during adversities. And again, although disasters capture most of our attention, the toxic stresses, the overwhelming stresses that just keep going on, generated by the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis, are of equal or greater impact on social, psychological, and emotional health. And research is increasingly diving into these impacts beyond just the disasters. And I'll just put a few up here. There's one that just came out not too long ago. Climate change is already impacting food prices, and it talks about the mental health impacts of that. There's a study that came out that talked about the culprit of mental health related hospital emergency room visits related to wildfire smokes. It's very unclear what the boundary is between that and heat waves and mental health disasters. This was focused in France. So we're seeing more and more of that. And when continually engaging residents in specific practices that grow and sustain mental wellness and transformation resilience is really key to addressing these issues. A public health approach to preventing and healing mental health and psychosocial issues requires ongoing multi-systemic efforts to transform norms, attitudes, habits, and behaviors. That's what they found in Iceland. It wasn't just treating the individual. You have to do norms and attitudes and habits and local behaviors. So as you engage residents in the other foundational protective factors we talked about, and the one we'll talk about in a minute, the 5th one, it is also very important to engage them in specific practices that research and experience shows is important for these issues. And what these practices do, it shifts our attention and our behaviors away from distress, anger, hopelessness, etc., to factors that build wellness, resilience, and healthy hope. And what I mean by healthy hope is we can become hopeful, but it's very naive. It's not connected to reality. Healthy hope means we actually have some evidence, some strategies to how we're going to get and find hope. And with other actions, most of these practices to engage in are most powerful when they're done with other people in the neighborhood or at the community level. So here are 6 that we identified. There's others that you can focus on in your community. You have to do some research on it. But the one we just talked about is laughing often. That's really key. And just as an example, in Victoria, BC, I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, there's Laughing Aloud, a how-to guide for making physical comedy show to build community resilience, was developed by a local neighborhood resilience group. They gave shows and the neighbors came together to do this. But there's also Glow Clown therapeutic laughing programs and many other ways that your TRCN can actively engage residents in laughing a lot. You can also practice forgiveness through community forgiveness campaigns. The Forgiveness Project and programs by the International Forgiveness Institute run these things and can help you learn how to run one in your community or in your neighborhood. Also helping residents continue to learn. When people are traumatized or severely stressed, we retreat into a self-protective survival mode. We're just trying to get by, and it can shut down the thinking and the learning that occurs. So you want to help people to keep learning, and that's going to be especially vital as the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis worsens. We got to keep learning how to deal with these issues. So UNESCO has the global network of learning cities, and you can sort of join that process if you're in, can figure out how to do that. And we also talked briefly about the Rural Opportunities Institute systems mapping to help residents learn about their trauma. Lots of ways to help residents keep learning. But also being grateful. There's the Attitude of Grateful campaign by the Newport News. And Say Something Nice Day is now actually a national day in the US, although most of us don't know anything about it. Lots of ways to help people be grateful for what they already have, for other people, for just being alive, etc., rather than wanting more all the time. Caring for a body is another of those very specific practices that are going to be vital. And there's many organizations, and many of you on the line are probably involved with these, that provide food or clothing or healthcare, shelter programs, et cetera, for many people. But also there's things like play streets that a TRCN can organize to help youth be remain physically healthy. These are when, especially in urban areas where you shut down a road in an urban area, and you put basketball courts up, or you put other nets up where people can play tennis, and the kids can just get out and meet each other and play in a very safe, healthy environment. And then there's just finding simple joys, which is different than laughing. You might laugh when you find the joys, but it's just finding things that you just really appreciate. In the UK, there's the Action for Happiness campaigns, and there's also Spread Joy through community art that occurs in some communities in Missouri in the US. So there's lots of different ways, but those 6 are really vital. Again, there might be other practices that you and your TRCN can focus on. But just keep in mind, you want to, no matter what else is happening, help people keep laughing and practice forgiveness for not only other people when they do something wrong because they're traumatized and stressed and their flight, fight, freeze, or fawn reactions have kicked in, but for yourself, because you'll do the same thing sometimes. We're all going to make mistakes, and that's just life. And it's especially life when during the stresses created by the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis. So keep learning, be grateful, take care of the physical body, and find simple joys in life. Very, very important practices. And remember that all of these practices, foundational practices, are interconnected. So engaging residents in specific practices to build and sustain wellness and resilience should be a standalone focus, but it should also be woven into the other 4 foundational protective factors. So when you're trying to build social connections in your community, one of the best ways might be to have events where people can come together and laugh together. And they then build social connections when they do that. They get to meet others, et cetera. Just an example. The 5th foundational protective factor is establish ongoing opportunities for residents to heal their traumas. And mostly peer-led group and community-minded healing opportunities is really going to be key. And that's because as stressing as it is to think about, we've got to get our heads around the fact that the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis is going to continue to grow far worse in the coming decades. And as we just heard from research from Jim Hansen and others just last week, we're now likely going to hit 2 degrees Celsius within 20 years. When I ran the University of Oregon climate research program many years ago, we did the first climate modeling for the state of Oregon. I think I shared this. And our projection was we were going to hit 2C at the end of the century. And we assumed that we would start reducing emissions, so we wouldn't even get there. Well, here we are 20 years later, by 2045, looks like we're going to hit that. So it's going to get a lot worse. And the trauma scenes mixture of toxic stresses and disasters will cause billions of people to experience anxiety, depression, anger, grief, hopelessness, and many other social, psychological, and emotional and behavioral problems. But for most people, these will not be symptoms of pathology. They will be normal reactions to frightening, dysfunctional, external conditions. We have to get our heads around that. We just can't pathologize everybody. So rather than doing that, rather than pathologizing people, it would be very important for TRCNs to help everyone understand that their distress is perfectly natural given the state of the world. And that is really going to be important. In fact, it's important with many mental health and psychosocial issues today. And this makes ongoing group and community-minded healing opportunities really vital. Helping people engage in the other protective factors we've talked about will enable many to remain healthy and, when they need to, heal themselves. When they're connected with other people, they've got friends, families, neighbors they can talk to, share with, et cetera, they'll remain healthy. Or when they get help from others through mutual aid networks, et cetera, they will remain healthy. Or they'll be able to heal themselves when they get distressed, severely distressed. But it's very likely that many other people are going to be severely distressed or traumatized and need support to heal. And healing can be difficult because traumatized people, think about yourself if you've ever experienced this, they feel hopeless and they believe they have no control over their own lives. This is just happening to me. There's nothing I can do about it. And they consequently often don't understand what they are experiencing or how to deal with it. You're just in this self-protective survival mode. Your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn reactions are overwhelming you. So you can't really understand what's going on. And all they can do often is attend to basic needs, finding food, water, shelter sometimes. And often or sometimes they adopt coping mechanisms that initially seem to make sense. This is a way to deal with my distress. Maybe alcohol will help, or other ways to anesthetize myself to distress. But when they continue to use them, they go awry, they go bad. And we end up pathologizing them because of that. So what does healing actually involve then? Judith Herman, I don't know if you've read her book, she does a great description of this process. She describes it as 3 basic stages: safety, acknowledgement, and reconnection. People often cannot heal until they feel physically and emotionally safe and supported. And that's what those social connections are for. That's what those mutual aid networks are for, et cetera, et cetera. And individual and community support, meaning the social connections and the provision of key resources, are thus essential to start the healing process. but that's just the start of it. When people feel safe and supported, they can begin to acknowledge what they experience and share it with others, which begins to release their trauma. And this can lead them to reconnect with the self and others and help them learn how to manage their distress in ways that really leads to health and wellness. And if you're in the mental health field, you know that's what it's about. Your connections with others, the person you're talking with. You first have to create some safety and some support. Then you just help them begin to share what's going on within them. You ask good questions, et cetera. And when they feel safe in sharing that, that's what begins to release the trauma. And over time, this helps people reconnect with themselves and others, and they learn how to manage their distress. And there's numerous age and culturally accountable group and community minded community opportunities to help residents heal their traumas. One, we've talked about this briefly before, and there's many of these groups. These are healing circles or other group methods. The Center for Mind-Body Medicine offers one. Convivencia gatherings in Sonoma County, California, was used after wildfires. And that is, these are with mostly Hispanic residents when men were not willing or not comfortable talking about mental health issues. So they put together basically picnics after work, after 5 o'clock. They invited people out to the picnics. They provided food, water, et cetera, et cetera. And then they just had group discussions without ever talking about mental health per se, about how people were feeling after the wildfires and loss of homes and damage that were done, et cetera. And it really became a very, very effective strategy. Oops, what happened here? There we go. But there's many somatic healing methods as well. Somatic means body-based, if you will. And I'm just going to list some resources here, just some examples. There's somatic practices in disaster-based global supervision by Barnett. There's expressive therapies, helping people release the trauma by expressing it through art, drama, music, dance, writing, et cetera. Arts in the aftermath, helping kids heal from natural disasters. Johns Hopkins Medicine put it out. There is also clinical treatment, clinical therapy. It will remain important. I'll talk about that a little more in a second. But you can see it's going to be a small slice of what's really going to be important. There's mindfulness-based healing methods. You can see what's there. There's spiritually based healing methods. There's a resource providing disaster spiritual care. There's nature-based or animal-based therapies. And again, a good resource there that I put down. There's memorial events that are very, very important. That is to say, if you've had a disaster in your community or a very serious impact on the community or the neighborhood, hold a regular series of memorials about it to help people come together, share their grief and distress, and it helps people heal it. And you can, down a disaster, in Australia, they did disaster resilience and it really wrote about it. And then again, there's other group healing methods. National Compadres Network does that with Native Americans. There's Healing Circles Global. There's lots of these. So you have to go, and the TRCN has to go and figure out what resonates with residents in my community or in my neighborhood. What is the cultural factors? What is the resources that we have, et cetera? And figure out what is, but you need to really think about how do we offer these group and community-minded healing opportunities on a regular basis. And many times it requires not stigmatizing people. Don't even call them a mental health issue or mental health focus. Just focus on other kinds of issues. A couple other things that are going to be important or can be is training residents in disaster mental health and psychological first aid. That can be part of the mutual aid networks. And its focuses on stabilizing individuals and communities affected by disasters right after, during and right after a serious event. But also resilience first aid is another approach to consider. It's a neuroscience-based training program run out of actually, the program I've been involved with is actually out of Australia. that's done a fabulous job. All sorts of research on its effectiveness. So I'd encourage you to look that up. But it really it shows significant improvement in helping people both personally and develop peer support capacity to deal with all sorts of mental health and psychosocial problems after serious events. And mental health services, like I said, treatment will remain important when, where, and for whom they are available and for whom they are appropriate. Mental health services are important, but the number of service providers, certified providers, will never be sufficient to address all the people, to assist all the people who are traumatized as the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis accelerates. And most of the certified professionals that exist are in wealthier urban areas, not low income or BIPOC communities, rural areas, or low income nations. And further, due to the fears of being stigmatized, treated inequitably, conflicts with spiritual beliefs, the high cost, and many other reasons, the research shows that almost 50% of the people who could benefit from mental health services simply won't engage. And many clinicians themselves will often be traumatized as the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis grows, which is why it will be important for they themselves to engage in regular healing activities. And just as importantly, treating individual symptoms may not work very well when toxic stresses and disasters continually occur and are reinforced by cultural norms, economic practices, public policies, et cetera. You can't just treat the next symptom all the time. And this is why it's really going to be important to do more than just offer mental health services. And one of the things that's going to be important is really training local residents to become peer facilitators in some of these practices. When residents get trained in how to provide some of these group and community-minded healing opportunities, they become trusted members of the community. They also have a good understanding of a relationship with other residents, so they're peers to people. And they can lead and facilitate mental wellness gatherings, healing circles, et cetera. They can help people get access to the supports and resources they need. They can give informal counseling and guidance on healthy behaviors. They can advocate for individual, group, and community health, equity, and justice. They can provide direct services such as psychological and resilience first aid, as we just talked about, and physical health support for those who need it. They can improve adherence to psychological and physical health recommendations. The whole list here of the benefits of them. They can enhance communications between community members by providing culturally appropriate mental and physical health education, et cetera. They can enhance communication between community members and all types of health providers. And they can provide feedback to the TRC and steering committee on what works, what does not, what should the TRCN be doing. And remember that the 5 foundational protective factors, again, are all interconnected. So offering age and ongoing opportunities for group and community-minded opportunities for people to engage in group and community-minded venues to heal their trauma should be a standalone focus. And it also should be woven into each of the other 4 foundational protective factors. So with that, I want to just give a brief recap of what we've talked about in this educational series. Again, we've concentrated a lot of information into 4 hours here, basically. But the key is that the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis is activating what I call the trauma scene. It's really a very serious situation that we're entering that's going to severely stress or traumatize nearly everyone in different ways, times, and magnitudes. And to prevent and heal the mental health issues that result from this and help people remain adaptive, healthy, and resilient, we've got to address multiple interacting factors, individual, family, social, economic, and ecological factors, as the social ecological model describes. And addressing these factors really requires a public health approach to mental wellness and transformational resilience. And as we talked about, I'm just summarizing again, a public health approach takes a population level approach, not one that merely focuses on individuals with symptoms of pathology or high-risk groups, though they must be fully integrated into the approach using what's called proportionate universalism and life course approaches. The mantra must be to leave no one behind. There was a question that came up at the end last week about, well, how does making sure that there's a just transition merge with, and how does that fit in with the comment of be careful about how you talk about mental health and groups that are marginalized, et cetera. That's about, you need to be careful about how you communicate that so it doesn't give wealthier people the sense that, oh, only the people who are marginalized are at risk. We're not. That's not what we're talking about. Everybody's at risk. We need a population level approach. But you want to give different kinds of interventions or offer different kinds of assistance to marginalized and groups that are more vulnerable. A public health approach to mental wellness and transformational resilience prioritizes preventing problems before they occur, not merely reacting to or treating them after they emerge. And those healing methods that I just talked about are integrated into that. So our focus really must be prevention first. And it focuses on strengthening protective factors, skills, strengths, social support networks, social norms, policies, not just trying to fix deficits or treat symptoms of pathology. So we really must focus on enhancing skills, strength, connections, and resources. And the most effective way to do this is to establish this horizontal social infrastructure in communities that we call a TRCN that involves a whole bunch of different kind of individuals and sectors, and they plan, implement, and continually improve actions that build and sustain the capacity of everyone for mental wellness and transformational resilience. We use this graphic, which is actually taken out of a program in North Carolina that describe a transformational resilience coordinating network. But looking at the groups that I listed here is just an example. People from many other groups and sectors should be involved, and it really depends on your community. And then we talked about the 5 foundational protective factors required to address these issues. The first and most important by far that should be integrated into all the other 4 is to build social connections across cultural, economic, and geographic boundaries. A couple of years ago, there was a report in Boston.com saying, new report highlights the importance of social connections in climate resilience. The second foundational protective factor, ensure a just transition by engaging residents, creating equitable, safe, and healthy, climate resilient, zero emission, physical, built, economic, and ecological condition. The UN a couple of years ago came out and said just transition policies can create 20 million green jobs. The third foundational protective factor is to build universal literacy about mental wellness and transformational resilience. The Guardian in the UK came out a couple of years back with an article saying, humanity's moment. How can we find meaning in the world that is once heaven and hell? The fourth foundational protective factor we just talked about is help residents regularly engage in specific practices that enhance mental wellness and resilience. Time magazine, a couple of years back, had an article, big front page actually, how gratitude can help combat climate change. And the last one is, again, establish those age and culturally appropriate opportunities for residents to heal their trauma. BSU, a couple of years ago, had an article on restorative circles, a powerful tool for community healing. Remember, all of these protective factors are interconnected. When you do one, you should try to do another. Again, building social connections. When you're doing that, help people laugh and also help people learn how trauma and toxic stress can affect their mind, body, and emotions. But a TRCN has to choose which one to start with or a couple to start with, and based on the conditions and resources in your community, and build from there. But just to reiterate, building community resilience is about relationships. The most important focus is to build ongoing social connections across boundaries in the community. And this means building horizontal relationships. It's really going to be key. And we've heard a lot of focus in the past, but on external physical hubs and resilience hubs, and they might or might not be helpful. But if they are going to be established, local residents, not nonprofits or public agencies, should choose if and where they should be established. So how do you get started? Too often we don't think about things that we can't figure out where it will lead and what will be required. I don't want to get into it because I don't know where this is going to take me, what we're going to require. But we don't need to all know all the steps and what it will lead to. We only need to know the first step. You need to start with step one. And then if and when it feels right, you take the next step and so forth. So start where you're at, start small, and then decide if you want to take another step. So if you're willing, I just want to ask you to take a few moments and think about how you can engage. And if you will, in 1 or 2 sentences, write down your vision of the role you can play, you personally can play in building wellness and resilience in your neighborhood and community. And then write down the first step you can take towards that vision. And then write down, if you can, any ideas you have about how you can decide after you take the first step, if and how you will do more. So just 1 or 2 sentences, comments, whatever. What's your vision of how you can help build wellness and resilience in your neighborhood and community? What's the first step you can take towards that vision? And any ideas on how you will know if and how you can do more. So go ahead and just take a moment to write some thoughts down if you're willing. And now let's just do some breakout rooms. If you would, just briefly share the vision you had of how you can help your community, the first step you can take, and if and how you will decide to do more. And after everyone has shared their ideas, discuss the different approaches and then post any key issues and questions that occur in chat. So we're going to take an 8-minute breakout room. And we hope you will stay with us through the breakout rooms because we're going to summarize afterwards what the next steps in the community practice. But I'm going to turn it over to Jesse now. And Jesse, if you will organize people into breakout rooms, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Appreciate it, Bob. Opening up breakout rooms now. Look forward to seeing everybody in about 8 minutes.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had some good discussions. And if you would, just post anything you have in chat, any issues that came up, any comments or questions, and then Christian will just read a few. So let's just take a few seconds and do that. Anything popping in there? One of the things while people are thinking about anything you want to post, that one of the things that came up even before we started this, our group was talking about funding. How do we get funding to support this work? And many times, I think I mentioned this in the past, you just start by doing it as a volunteer. And especially a mutual aid network to help your neighbors, et cetera, you don't have to get funding to do that. But if you're working for an organization, you want to do this as part of your professional life, think about how to go to your executive, your supervisor, whoever it is, and ask them to give you a share of time that you can dedicate to the TRCN. Maybe it's 10% to start off with, 15%, and just see how that goes, and then let them know this is really being helpful. I think if you give me more time, it actually might benefit our organization even more, et cetera. So get the funding from what you're already doing to do that. And then there's also, once you get going, we talk about this in the handbook, once a TRCN gets organized, there's many different opportunities to go raise funding from donors, from local residents, from members, et cetera, to think about. But it's really getting that first thing going. Anything you want to share there, Christian?
Yeah, we have some appreciation for some comments about weaving this work into preparing folks locally to deal with disasters. So great to see that. Some more appreciation, some wonderful networking going on, a breadth of resources being shared, and some information being exchanged for future connections. So love to see that community being built in these breakout rooms too. It's very awesome. And happy Earth Day, everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if many of you know it, it's Earth Day. So thank you. Thank you all. Well, thanks. I just want to remind everybody that this Thursday, we're going to offer the second skills training open session, as we call it. It'll be at the same time and use the same Zoom link as today's session. And it's that Christy's going to run it, and it's going to be focused on how to organize and use mutual aid networks in your neighborhood and community. And then the final skills training open session is going to be on Thursday, May 8th. We have an idea of what we're likely to focus on, but we'd really love your feedback on other skills you want to know more about. So you can't hit this link here on the slide, but Christian has sent it to you, and we'll send it out in the next couple of days so you can just get it. So the more information you can provide us of anything else that comes up, we can decide how to do that. And we invite you to apply to form a Transformational Resilience Coordinating Network. And there's the link to it. And again, Christian's putting that in there, and it'll be in the other forms. So we really invite you to participate if this is something you want to do. And just some resources to share. You can get a whole bunch more information by going to that website. You can see, and Christian's posting that also about the TRCN programs. You can also see the handbooks that we send to different perspective and emerging and commission groups. I've written 3 books about these issues: Transformational Resilience, From Me to We, which is really a systems thinking book, and Preventing and Healing Climate Trauma. So consider those. So I want to sort of close with just 3 suggestions for everybody. As the climate ecosystem biodiversity crisis goes on, and I think we'll see more political strife occur, as we're seeing in the US, as this worsens. I think in many ways, it's not the only reason, but I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing more of this move towards authoritarianism, et cetera. That you need to stay present and care for yourself. Continually practice what I call presencing skills so you can care for yourself as you care for other people on the planet. And at the same time, always remember and stand up for your purpose. Always keep your purpose in mind. What is it you want to achieve to find meaning in life? And don't let other people or external conditions deter you from pursuing it. And then try to ride the winds of change towards transformation. And what I mean by that is there's going to be lots of ups and downs as we try to deal with this issue, as all these other social, political, economic changes occur. So try to remain secure with your skills, with your strengths, and be resilient as you help push for change. As closing then, I'd just like to ask each of you that's still with us to post one word in chat that describes how you feel right now at the close of this final educational session, this part of the 4-part sessions. Just post one word in chat, and Christian can quickly read them. How do you feel right now as a result of this program you've been involved with?
We're feeling grateful, connected, future, feeling lively, feeling inspired.
It's great. Those are wonderful.
Yeah, I resonate with all of those. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Well, I want to just thank you all for participating in the Community Practice Educational Series, and I hope we can see you all Thursday for the Skills Training Open Session. And I wish you all the very, very best of life. Thank you all. Take care, everybody.